Hello and welcome. I'm Leigh Ann Gerrans and you're watching W News. Broadcasting live from the Al Arabiya headquarters, these are our top stories. The Israeli Security Cabinet has approved the Gaza ceasefire deal. Netanyahu's office says the approval supports the achievements of the war's goals. In a world exclusive, Hamas tells Al Arabiya News the deal would have never been done without Trump and says Biden was complicit in the delay. TikTok could be banned in the US from this weekend as the Supreme Court rejects an appeal from the app's owner over national security concerns. And former Pakistan Prime Minister Imran Khan is jailed for 14 years on corruption charges. To our top story, and the Israeli Security Cabinet has approved the ceasefire deal. A full government meeting will take place later today. Benjamin Netanyahu's office said the approval comes after examining all political, security and humanitarian aspects, and with the understanding that the agreement supports the achievement of the war's goals. Let's go live to Tel Aviv and get the latest from our reporter now, Blake Sifton. Blake, thank you for joining me this evening. The Security Cabinet has finally given the go-ahead. Talk us through their discussions and what happens now.
That's right. Earlier today on Friday, the Israeli Security Cabinet met to discuss the ceasefire deal for Gaza and approved it. The wider political cabinet is now deliberating, and they are also expected to approve the deal. What would follow would be a period of 24 hours when citizens of Israel have the right to petition the High Court if they have reason to oppose the deal going forward. However, it is not expected that the High Court would intervene, and the deal would likely come into effect noon local time on Sunday.
Blake, when are we likely to see the release of the first wave of hostages?
So in the first phase of the deal, which is expected to last 42 days, we would see the release of 33 hostages. The first would be expected three women, a group of three women who would be released at 4 p.m. on Sunday. That would be followed by 4 women released on the 7th day of the deal. An additional 3 people would be released each week for 4 weeks, and the remaining 14 hostages would be released on the final and 6th week. We do know the identity of these 33 hostages who are potentially being released in this deal. They include female soldiers, female civilians, men over 50, as well as the sick and injured. However, we do not know the order in which they would be released or how many among them are deceased. As though the Israeli government says the majority are alive, it is believed that some are deceased.
Not everyone is pleased about the news. Israel's Security Minister Ben-Gvir has quit or is planning to quit. He's threatened to quit over what he's called the disastrous ceasefire deal. What's the reaction to that news been?
That's right. National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir has been very forcefully against this deal, aggressively against this deal. And he has said that his party will resign from Benjamin Netanyahu's ruling coalition if this deal is passed, which of course it seems like it will be. He took to Twitter to say, we will not overthrow this government and we will support it from the outside, but we will not be partners in a defeatist agreement. I love Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and will make sure he continues to be Prime Minister, but I will leave because the deal that was signed is disastrous. So pretty strong words there from Ben-Gvir. It is worth noting, of course, that even without his party, Benjamin Netanyahu does still have enough seats in the Knesset to maintain his coalition, and this would not affect the deal going forward. But generally, with all these developments, it is a stressful time in this country, and crucial days are ahead as this region waits for a ceasefire to come into effect more than 15 months after the war began.
Yes, indeed, a stressful time. Blake Sifton in Tel Aviv, thank you so much for joining me. A reminder of our top story, and the Israeli Security Cabinet have approved the Gaza ceasefire deal. Al Arabiya News has spoken exclusively to a senior Hamas official who says the agreement would never have happened without Trump, and Joe Biden was complicit in delays. Here is exactly what he had to say.
I couldn't imagine that this could be possible without the pressure from the coming administration led by President Trump, because his envoy in the region, Mr. Whitecoff, was here for the last few days, taking notice of all the details and where are the obstacles, and exercising pressure, especially on the Israeli government. Therefore, yes, they have a great input to reach this moment. And I'm sure most of the delay for the last months was because of the reluctant, maybe complicit Biden administration.
The first of 3 stages of the ceasefire deal includes the release of 33 hostages, including women, children and the elderly, in exchange for Palestinian prisoners. We can now speak to the aunt of one of the former hostages, who is now an advocate for hostage families. Ella Moore joins me this evening. Ella, a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you for joining me. Your 3-year-old niece, Abigail, was taken hostage by Hamas on the 7th of October. Thankfully, she's now safe and sound after being released at the end of November. But tell us what that ordeal was like for you and for your family, and how are you feeling right now today on this news of a possible ceasefire?
I can tell you that when a 3-year-old who is an orphan because she and her siblings saw her parents getting murdered in front of her eyes, and then she was kidnapped to Gaza for 51 long days. I think that's the real meaning of hell on earth to go through as a human being. It was a very hard time for us, for the family, and for all of Israel. And we are still going through a very hard time with all of the hostages still being there in Gaza. We're very happy that there's a deal now, but we are happy and we are very worried. We don't know how they're going to come back, if they're going to be, in what condition they're going to come back, because we know they are severely tortured, brutally tortured by Hamas in the tunnels with no air, no light, no food, starved, raped, beaten. So we are very worried about the conditions that are going to come back, and we are worried about the 65 hostages that will still remain in Gaza.
Yes, indeed. I actually just wanted to say, Abigail turned 4 in captivity. How is she now growing up without her parents, and is she getting back to what childhood should be like?
Well, I can say, yes, she had a birthday when she was a hostage in Gaza. I think it's horrible to have a birthday without your family. And today she's 5, and she's an amazing little girl, and she's so smart and so sweet, and we love her so much. We try to keep her privacy because she didn't choose to be so famous. She would just get her life back, and she would not choose that. She would just want her parents back and her family and her house, because she went through a domicide. When you lose your house, you lose your community, you lose your parents. She lost everything. All of the hostages did, and a lot of people in Israel, they lost everything they had. Even hostages, they lose their identity. So it's very hard to think about it, but we think about recovery now, and we want to recover the hostages that will come back, and we want to recover the people of Israel who just want to live in peace. And we just want to recover all our very hard wounds that we have right now in the heart of Israel.
When the hostages are released, everyone will need care and rehabilitation. You just touched on that there. And I know that you are involved in homeopath work, and that's something that you do. Looking forward and looking to the future, how are hostages going to be saved from this trauma? As you say, it's very difficult, it's long term, we don't know how they were treated.
Yeah, I think it's a trauma that will go on for years in Israel, for all of them and for all of us. I think it's very hard to recover a hostage. I don't know if you can recover a hostage. You can just help them to create a new life and just hope that they could handle it and they're not too injured mentally, emotionally, physically. I'm afraid the hostages will come back and they will not be able to function because we don't know if they can see, if they're blind, if they're not deaf. I know a few hostages that came back cannot hear, severely injured. It's very hard to think about their recovery, but that's what we have to do now in Israel. We have to give them a lot of love and a lot of love to the families, and to give them the time to settle down and to know that now they're in a safe place and with safe hands. And all of the country is gonna be so happy. We're waiting for them so much, like they are our brothers and our sisters. And we're just waiting that we can just see that they're okay and to start healing them. We'll start. I don't know if you can, but we'll try.
Yes, definitely. It is a process. The war in Gaza has been going on now for 15 months. How are you feeling about the future, and how has this impacted Israeli society?
I think the war should end. We have to end the war. We have to bring the hostages back. We have to bring everybody back and to start the healing here. I think everybody is affected by this war. We didn't want this war. Nobody wanted this war. And I'm sure also the citizens of Gaza did not want this war, because everybody has been kidnapped by Hamas. And I'm sure all the people that are suffering there are suffering because what Hamas did. And my heart is also with the innocent people over there, that they didn't want this war and they just want to live and to grow their children and to feed their children exactly like we want to. So I pray everything will be over soon and every person can just live his life like we just want to, live in life in peace. We don't want anything else.
Ella, I was just going to say, I want to send you lots of love, and it's really, really appreciated that you joined us on the show to tell us your story. Best of luck. That's Ella Moore, an aunt of one of the released hostages. Once again, absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Let's cross our fingers it's going to happen and everybody will be home quickly as possible. All of them, all of the 98 hostages, not only 33 that was on the first deal. All of them. We want all of them back.
Thank you, Ella. TikTok could be banned in the United States as early as this Sunday after the Supreme Court rejected an appeal from the social media platform owners in regards to concerns surrounding national security. The decision follows warnings from Biden's administration that the app posed a threat because of its ties to China. However, it is still unclear how the government will actually enforce this ban. Let's go live to Washington now and speak to our correspondent, Benji Hyer. Benji, thank you so much for joining me. Firstly, tell us how the Supreme Court actually reached this decision.
Well, the ruling coming out a few hours ago, and it wasn't unanimous. There was some disagreement amongst the 9 justices, but overall the conclusion was as follows, that TikTok, the Supreme Court says, gives a foreign adversary, in other words, China, the ability to leverage its control over the platform to collect vast amounts of personal data from 170 million US users. That's been the allegation from the US government. That's the reason that Congress passed this law. The Supreme Court says that divestiture, therefore, is necessary to address Congress's well-supported national security concerns, adding that this ruling would not violate First Amendment rights, the right to free speech protected by the Constitution. That had been at the core of TikTok's case. The White House also putting out a statement just now saying that TikTok should remain available to Americans, but under American ownership. Essentially that ByteDance, TikTok's Chinese owner, should sell the app by the deadline of Sunday or else face a ban. ByteDance, however, is reluctant to do so. The way that this would work is that TikTok wouldn't just suddenly be taken off people's devices unless TikTok decided to pull the plug itself. And that's for 2 reasons. One is that actually President Biden says that he won't be enforcing the ban on Sunday anyway. And second of all, even if this ban is upheld in the longer term, what would happen is that over time it would be unavailable on app stores, or updates wouldn't come onto people's phones, and therefore the app would essentially become redundant. And so where does this leave us? Well, the bottom line is it's now up to President-elect Donald Trump to decide how to proceed.
Benji, what will this mean for the millions of influencers who use TikTok as their main source of income? We know it brings in so much revenue. Will they have to move on to another platform? What's the future there?
Well, it depends on what Donald Trump decides to do, and we'll talk about him in just one moment. In terms of in the short term, there has been this mild panic about if TikTok does get banned, what do creators, what do users do? There are obviously American alternatives, Instagram, YouTube, for example, for short-form videos. We have seen in the hundreds of thousands people move over towards another Chinese app known in English as Red Note, similar sort of thing to TikTok, but this normally catering just to a Chinese audience in China and much more restrictive in terms of what can be posted and what can be discussed. There will be hope amongst TikTok community that their saviour lies in President-elect Donald Trump, who has done a remarkable about-turn on this issue. Previously, in his first term, he was leading the charge to ban TikTok. Now, a staunch supporter of the app, given how favourable it has been towards him during his election campaign. He has links through his mega billionaire donors, I should say, during his campaign. He has met with TikTok's owner, who will be present front and centre during his swearing-in ceremony at the inauguration on Monday. And he's also said that it is now his decision about what to do next with TikTok, whether to try to suspend enforcement of the law, whether to try to get Congress to overturn it. He's also spoken in past hours to President Xi Jinping of China, where the pair did discuss TikToks and other subjects. The reason for Donald Trump's change of heart on TikTok is frankly because he likes the popularity that it gives him. He can reach out to his 50 million followers on that, and therefore he will push for a resolution. But with ByteDance very unwilling to sell the app and the valuable algorithm that comes it, and with Sino-skeptic lawmakers on Capitol Hill not willing to overturn the law, it's going to have to mean some sort of unprecedented executive action from the next White House resident in order to resolve this and mean those 170 million American users can continue to use the app in the coming weeks and months.
Benji, I just want to get your take on one thing. We're just hearing the inauguration ceremony, which is, of course, going to be held on Monday, is actually going to move inside, and that's because of the weather. Is it absolutely freezing? What more do we know?
Well, you might be able to see from the backdrop behind me that the snow is still on the ground in Washington, D.C. It snowed days ago, but because of the freezing temperatures over the past week, much of it has not actually melted away. On Inauguration Day itself, on Monday. It is expected to get as low as minus 12 degrees Celsius. And so, yes, it's moving inside. We have a statement from the President-elect Donald Trump, who says that because of these crazy low temperatures, for the safety of those that were attending and law enforcement, that ceremony will be moved inside the Capitol Rotunda. The last time that happened was for Ronald Reagan back in 1985. Not really clear what happens to, the outside mall area where we were expecting thousands to descend on Washington, D.C. and attend and watch the ceremony, whether they will still gather there or somewhere else. What will still be happening, though, is a party in the evening funded by TikTok, honouring influencers who helped Donald Trump spread his campaign message in a kind of weird full circle situation. So those events will still go ahead. The inauguration will still happen, but for the first time in decades, it's going to happen inside rather than outside.
Benji, I feel like Monday is going to be an historic day for lots of other reasons rather than the inauguration being inside. Benji Hyer in Washington, keep warm and thank you very much. And let's take a look at some of the other stories making the headlines today. Putin and his Iranian counterpart have been holding talks in Moscow ahead of a treaty signing. Vladimir Putin and Masoud Pezeshkian's strategic partnership will involve closer defense cooperation, which is set to worry the West. Pezeshkian also said they were hoping to finalize an agreement on building a nuclear power plant in Iran with Russia's help. Los Angeles evacuees have been told to stay away from home at least another week. That's as emergency responders remove toxic waste from the incinerated neighborhoods and cut off electricity and gas lines, posing a hazard. Search teams are still processing human remains. The death toll stands at 27. Now, a SpaceX Starship rocket has failed during launch, breaking up in space minutes after taking off in Texas. The prototype forced airline flights over the Gulf of Mexico to change course due to falling debris. It's a significant setback to Elon Musk's flagship rocket program. Donald Trump has revealed he's appointing 3 special envoys to Hollywood. Actors Mel Gibson, Jon Voight and Sylvester Stallone are all supporters of the president-elect. Trump says Hollywood is a great but very troubled place, but the 3 ambassadors can help the area be bigger, better and stronger. A 14-year prison sentence has been handed down to Imran Khan, the jailed former Pakistani Prime Minister in a corruption case. Since 2023, Khan has been imprisoned on multiple corruption charges and blames the country's powerful military for his ouster and for colluding with his political rivals. That's a charge the army does deny. Hyer Mustafa is in Islamabad, and we go live to there.
An accountability court sentenced former Prime Minister Imran Khan and his wife after convicting them of corruption. The couple faced accusations of accepting land as a gift from a business tycoon in return for laundered money during Khan's time in office. The court has directed Imran Khan to pay $3,500 as a penalty, while his wife must pay $1,800. Failure to comply could result in an additional 6-month jail sentence. This is the 4th major conviction the former Prime Minister has faced. 3 prior convictions announced in January last year concerning the sale of state's gifts, leaking state secrets, and an illegal marriage were overturned or suspended. Despite this, Khan continues to be imprisoned, with many cases still pending against him. The leadership of Imran Khan's party criticizes the court's decision as politically motivated and vows to challenge the decision in the country's top court. The government welcomes the decision, stressing that the country's judiciary has upheld democratic principles. The decision comes amid the ongoing dialogue between the government and Imran Khan's party leadership to end the political deadlock. The country's information minister has affirmed that the ruling in this corruption case will not interfere with the ongoing discussions between the government and PTI. Observers argue that the announcement of the verdict may hinder dialogue efforts and could lead to increased political instability. Hira Mustafa, Al Arabiya News, Islamabad.
Hira Mustafa there in Islamabad. Thank you so much for joining us. Let's take a look at some of the other stories making the headlines today. French Prime Minister Emmanuel Macron is in Beirut today as he supports Lebanon form a government. Paris has played a key role in breaking Lebanon's political deadlock ever since it agreed a truce with Israel. Authorities in South Korea are facing a deadline on the detention of suspended President Yoon Suk-yeol. Investigators are expected to ask the court to approve a detention warrant for up to 20 days. South Korea has experienced political turmoil after Yoon tried to impose martial law, a move that was voted down by parliament. 3 lawyers of the late Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny have been jailed and handed sentences varying from 3.5 to 5 years. It's after a Russian court, which was held behind closed doors, found the trio guilty of belonging to an extremist group. Navalny's widow has called them political prisoners and demanded their release. And finally, China's population has fallen for the 3rd consecutive year. The total number of people in the country dropped by 1.39 million in 2024, reigniting concerns that the world's 2nd largest economy will struggle as the number of workers and consumers decline. Let's take a look at some top business news now. Meanwhile, China has released a slew of economic data this morning showing its economy grew last year by a solid 5%, meeting the government's target. Other annual figures also show that the total retail sales of consumer goods were up by 3.5% last year compared to 2023. Despite those positive indicators, China's economy is still facing challenges from the real estate crisis, leaving people concerned about their job prospects. The Toyota subsidiary Hyer Motors has agreed to pay $1.6 billion to settle an emissions scandal. The Japanese firm also pleaded guilty to deceiving U.S. regulators about the amount of emissions produced by its diesel engines. Hyer Motors has been banned from exporting its diesel engines to the U.S. for 5 years. It comes after the truck company was previously charged with fraud in a Detroit court. Let's go to sports now, and Novak Djokovic has advanced to the pre-quarters of the Australian Open men's singles after beating Thomas Macic in straight sets in the 3rd round today. Djokovic took just 2 hours and 22 minutes to win the match at the Rod Laver Arena. Meanwhile, Coco Gauff also advanced to the 4th round after taking down the 2021 US Open champion Leylah Fernandez. Gauff continued her impressive run this year, and that's having won all 8 of her matches. And Erling Haaland has signed a new 9-year contract at Manchester City in one of the largest deals in football history. The striker will see an uplift to his £400,000 a week wages, and 2 release clauses in his previous deal have not been reinserted. The 24-year-old insisted that he wants to create a legacy at Etihad Stadium. Now to a reminder of our top stories today. The Israeli Security Cabinet has approved the ceasefire deal. Netanyahu's office says the approval supports the achievements of the war's goals. In a world exclusive, Hamas tells Al Arabiya the deal would have never been done with Trump and says Biden was complicit in the delay. TikTok could be banned in the US from this weekend as the Supreme Court rejects an appeal from the app's owner over national security concerns. And former Pakistan Prime Minister Imran Khan is jailed for 14 years on corruption charges. And that's all from us on W News. Thank you for joining us. Coming up next, we have special interviews with Melinda Nufrico and Hadley Gamble, followed by The Dressing Room. Good night and have a lovely Friday.